Hi, I'm Miss Megan from Cooper-Siegel Community Library, and this is DIY STEAM. This week's project is making a weaving with old DVDs or CDs. Let's take a look on how to do it.
When you open up your kit, you will see that you have a whole bunch of yarn. One set of yarn is kind of a whitish color, and one set of yarn is a little bit thinner. Set these two aside, just so you know where they are so that you have them when you're ready to use them. You also have this piece of cardboard that's going to work like a needle for you. Your CD that we are going to recycle, if you flip it over, you will see that it might be an audio CD, it might be a DVD. It's one of the old ones from the library. We're going to recycle it today and make it into a piece of woven art instead. And a piece of black paper for when you're done with your weaving and want to add some extra decorations. Before you start, grab yourself a pair of scissors and some glue. You might want to use white glue instead of the glue stick, but I had the glue stick handy today. So, your CD is going to form the base of your weaving. Unlike regular weaving, where you will do your weaving and then you will cut it off, this CD is going to be part of the decoration and part of your weaving, so you're not going to cut it off at the end. Take your white thread, and we're going to start putting our warp threads on. These warp threads are the threads that form the structure of your weaving. What you're going to want to do is, this is your back side, and make a square knot. You do that by crossing your threads and then tucking the end thread over, and then doing that again, crossing your threads and tucking your end over. So that is your first warp thread. You are going to make a bunch more. In order to make it easier to count, you're going to double them up because we want to have an uneven number. So what we're going to do is we are going to double them up and then do one that's a single so that you end up with an odd number at the end. So there's my first double, and I'm going to go in and do my next one. My second double. Let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, here are my double threads. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then I'm going to add one more as a single, and then I'm going to turn it over to the back here. And then I'm going to do a square knot using that long thread that I had left over from my starting one. Okay, so I'm going to cut that thread. I'm going to trim this thread as well. And now I'm going to spread out my warp threads here. I'm also going to have them those two are crossed. I'm going to flip them so that they're not crossed. There we go. And I'm going to spread them out so they are evenly distributed. That looks pretty good. Okay, so that takes care of my warp threads. You can choose which color you want to start out with. You might want to start out with this thinner one for the center. I'm going to test that out. So you're going to put your thread through the hole. I'd go ahead and tie it with a square knot again. So again, you're going to cross and tuck the thread under, and then do that again. So I'm going to cross my 2 threads, and I'm going to tuck the end under, and that makes my square knot. So that's all set. If this thread is too long for you, feel free to cut it to make it easier to work with. And then I am going to go under the first one, over the second one, over the next one, and just keep going over and under and over and under. And then I'm going to pull the thread through. I've only done about 4 of my threads so far, but at this point I'm going to pull it through, and I have this end. Since this is my front, I'm going to make sure that this end tucks through on the back, and I'm going to make a square knot by tucking that end underneath one of the warp threads and knotting it to that warp thread. Like that. And then I'm going to just keep going over and under. And then pulling it through after I get a couple rows through. I'm going to do a couple more rows, and then when I'm ready to change to a different color, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I've gotten a good amount of weaving done around here, and I'm ready to change colors, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to take a long bit of my string here, probably 2 to 4 inches, and I am going to cut it there. And with this really long tail, I am going to add on my next piece. I'm going to do the same type of knot that I did before. Where I cross and then go under. If those knots are giving you trouble, you can always ask a grown-up for help. Okay, and then this, I'm going to cut off the thread from my needle, and I'm going to find the thread, or the end of the thread here. This is a really long bit of thread, so I'm also going to kind of decide how much I want to have and maybe cut it in half so I'm not pulling so long to get it out. And then I'm going to tie that back onto my cardboard needle. So same thing, I'm going to cross and then tuck under that end and do that again. I'm going to cross and tuck under the end. Okay, and then I'm ready to keep working on my weaving and pulling through, and it will slowly change colors. Don't worry about the ends of your knot. I'll show you what to do with those in a minute. I'm going to work on some more weaving. You can always pause this video and work on some more weaving as well. Okay, I've gotten a little bit farther, and I wanted to show you what I'm doing with the tails of that knot when I switched colors. So as I get to this long thread, I am making sure it stays tucked underneath the white warp threads, and that it's getting tucked underneath the threads that I keep doing round and round. At this point, once your knot is kind of covered up, you can always, at this point, kind of trim that so it gets out of your way. Tuck it under a little bit. And then it will just slowly disappear as you continue your weaving. I also wanted to mention that as you're doing your weaving, definitely pay attention to your white warp threads and make sure that they don't get all clustered too close together like this as you're weaving. They do have a tendency of slipping and sliding. So as you're doing this, just pay attention and make sure that they are relatively even and spaced out as you're doing your weaving. You can decide how much weaving you want to do. You can do weaving all the way up to the top, or you can decide to keep some of your CD visible since it's such an interesting iridescent color. So you can always keep some of that if you want. I've also given you some black construction paper. So if you want to add some additional designs in addition to your weaving, you can do that as well. So what you could do, for example, is I am going to finish off my weaving. So I'm again going to give myself a nice long tail there. And I'm going to tuck that tail underneath one of the warp threads, and then that's going to make a loop, and I'm going to push that end through the loop to make my first knot. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take the end and push it under one of the warp threads. That makes my loop, and I'm going to push the tail through the loop to make my knot. Use your cardboard needle. Use your needle to tuck that thread underneath so you can't see it anymore. If the thread that you started with is also poking out, feel free to trim that at this point. And then that's how you finish that up. I am also going to take some of my thread and add a loop so I can hang it. I'm gonna pick one of my warp threads and give myself a nice big loop to hang that. There we go. And then I mentioned the black construction paper. You might be completely done with your weaving at this point. You might decide that you just want a little bit of weaving and then the rest of it you want to be the color of the CD. You might decide that you want to do your weaving all the way to the edge. It's just a matter of what you're doing with your artistic piece. You also might decide that you want to add some designs with the black craft paper. So I'm going to take the black craft paper and I am going to fold it a couple times. And let's see. I'm going to cut a triangle shape. Let's see, I'm going to use those triangle shapes. Cut some more triangle shapes, so hopefully they're all more or less the same size. And then I could glue the construction paper to make a additional design that way. So we'd have something like that, and then I would just glue those pieces on. It's up to you. Play around, see what looks good.
I hope you have fun creating your woven project out of old DVDs and CDs. If you enjoy doing projects with yarn, I wanted to tell you about this book called Yarn Art by Paul Calver, and it has other interesting things that you can do with just a little bit of yarn, and some other objects, like this rainbow pot that you can make using an old glass jar and some colorful yarn. If you're interested in other projects like this, you can check this book out from the library. I'll see you next time.